This is your weekly moment of growth. So this moment of growth is going to be a lot of fun for me because for the first time, I'm answering your questions that you guys gave to me about life, business, podcasting, and everything in between. Now, obviously, I got a lot of DMs. Instagram gave me a lot of those questions. I don't have time to get to every single person's questions, but I'm going to try my best to kind of cover the gamut of everything and make sure that I answer the questions that were asked the most. One of the first questions that I got then got repeated, and that was, I'll just read the one that I got from Zach, and the question was, what's the one thing the top performers you interview do to manage their time better? Obviously, as our success grows, our time gets taken in so many different directions. And so one thing that I've realized while talking to these top performers is they make sure that they schedule and stick to their schedule. They respect themselves enough that they're not going to stray. They set their day up in the morning properly by taking care of themselves first, and then they follow through with what's on their schedule. They're very, very disciplined, and they're very, very loyal. So you're not going to have ultra successful people cancel on you too often because they understand the importance of showing up and giving 100%. And so when we realize that if we just stick to our schedule and we don't allow ourselves to get pulled by the potential noise, it's a lot easier to maintain sanity, and it also keeps us on our goal and focused on the direction that we need to go. They also don't put things on their calendar that isn't serving them. So be aware of where you're spending your time. I think if we realize that we stop wasting time, there's plenty of time in a day. And so we just have to be more cognizant of what we're doing during our downtime. A question that I got from Jared was, when you feel like you hit a brick wall, what is your inspiration to keep going? And for me, whenever I feel like I hit that brick wall, like I haven't, or like I'm not going to break through, there's days that I want to quit, I look back at where I came from. And I focus on the growth that I've had over the last couple of years. And I focus on the little wins. And I also realize that there are many times I felt like I hit a brick wall, but I was able to push through. And so I go back and I celebrate some of my victories, which reinvigorates me to push even harder. So I would say, look back at your wins and focus on them while pushing forward, because when you do that, it really does give you that extra little boost. Now, there were about 15 people who asked me this next question, and so I wanted to make sure that I covered this one. And the question was, how do you properly launch a podcast? Now, this is a whole entire series. This is a course. Like, I could talk hours on this about all the little intricate details of how to properly launch and do all these other things. But I will share with you the tips to make sure that you're going to get the traction you need day one. So you can start off on the right foot, right? So the main thing you want to do when launching a podcast, there's two main things. One, you want to make sure that you launch day one with multiple episodes. So you want to be able to launch with between 3 to 5 episodes. And the reason we do this is because it gives your audience a taste of what you're going to be all about. If you only do one episode, it doesn't showcase your skills. It doesn't showcase the types of guests you're going to have. It doesn't showcase anything that they're going to be able to experience. So you're not going to have those people subscribe. You want to give them a multitude of episodes to listen to so they want to click subscribe, so they want to go along with the journey with you. That's number one. Number two, you want to make sure that you have a launch team in place. So I would collect 25 to 50 plus people that day one will subscribe, rate, review, and then post on social media about your podcast launch. What this does is it creates excitement outside of your circle. Because it's not necessarily your circle that you've already created that's going to listen to your podcast. It's going to be people outside of that circle as well. And so you want the people that are close to you to promote you, to support you, and do all those things. So those are my top 2 tips. Obviously, like I said, there's a whole series. I'm thinking about doing a course. So if you're interested, let me know. But with that being said, those are the 2 main things. So with the next question, I'm going to stick with the podcast theme, and Jody, who is somebody who's attending Growth and Movement Live next year, which I'm really excited about, but she actually sent in a question or commented with a question where there's actually 3 questions within the one, and I'll read the 3 and then I'll kind of break down my answers to them. So 1, how do you decide the subject matter for your latest podcast? Do you keep notes about things that inspire you? And how far in advance do you plan? So first of all, how do I decide the subject matter for my latest podcast? Really, there's two parts to this question because I do have two types of episodes, right? I have the solo episodes like this one, which is my weekly moment of growth, and then I also have guests. So the easier question is the guest. Like, how do I decide the content from the guest? I have people on my show that inspire me, people who have inspired me in my life, in my business, in my journey. Some are clients, some are friends, and some are just inspirational people that I've reached out to that I've followed for a really long time. Really, their subject matter is what I've absorbed, right? It's what I've seen, it's what I like, and then it's just their story, and their story always teaches us something. Just like our story teaches us something, their story teaches you something. So the people that inspire me and the guests on my show kind of dictate those subject matters, which is why you see me cover a large range of things. I typically stay in the business, self-development, spiritual world more than any other one, but sometimes I stray, right? Like actually today I have an interview with a guy who wrote an amazing book called The Bezos Letters. And so we're going to talk business, we're going to talk Bezos, we're going to talk Amazon. So my guests kind of dictate that one. Now, as far as these solo episodes, it's just my life. It's things I've recently overcome. It's things that I've come up against. And I realize, like, for instance, like this one, the Q&A one, I've had a lot of people reaching out, asking me questions lately. And I'm like, well, why don't I just knock out a bunch of the questions on the show? Last week I just turned 35. And so I did the 35 life lessons in 35 years. So it's really about life and what I'm experiencing. So that kind of answers the first part of that question. The second one was, do you keep notes about the things that inspire you? Yeah, I mean, I have a really good memory about certain things. If it's something that really hits me hard, I have a really good memory about it. I was actually with some friends and I was talking about past guests, and my one friend stopped me and he goes, "How the heck do you remember the little intricate details about the conversations you have with these people?" When it's something that inspires me, I remember. So I don't necessarily always jot them down, but there's certain things that might really grab me, like a quote that somebody said or something, and I'll just type it in my notes on my phone. So yes and no is the answer to that question. And the last one is, how far in advance do you plan? Right now it's Wednesday at 9:40 a.m., and this will release Friday at 3 a.m. So I don't overplan, but there are certain times if I'm traveling a lot that I will bank a bunch of things, and I'm usually 3, 4, 5 weeks ahead on these moments of growth. And then with my interviews, I usually have 3 to 5 that I've already recorded that are just sitting there that I kind of go through and schedule accordingly. So hopefully that answers your questions, Jody, and I'll talk to you soon. Actually, I think I'm going to see you this weekend when you're possibly listening to this episode, so that'll be cool. Next one's a question from Laura. She asked me the top 3 tips when starting the process of quitting your full-time 9-to-5 job to pursue being your own boss. So first, Laura, thank you for the question. I absolutely love it because this is something that so many people struggle with when they're unhappy in their job. But when do you make the leap? What do I do? And so the top 3 tips that I would recommend to anybody. I'm not somebody who says, just cut the cord, just jump. I really believe that you should start to build a base on the side. So I would start by building a business first. So for instance, I started to build a podcast production and coaching company while I was still working full time. So I knew, number one, that it was something that people would pay for. Number 2, I knew it was something that I could grow. And then that kind of gives you that comfort and that net that you can kind of take that leap. The second tip would be to build up funds for yourself that you can live off of while you're still growing once you take that leap. Because here's the thing. When you leave your 9-to-5 job, your business will grow. Because, at the end of the day is you're spending more time on it. People notice it more. Your energy shifts. You're giving out a different vibe. All those things happen, and then your business will start to grow. But you want to make sure you secure yourself 3 to 6 months of income or of bills that you kind of have set aside to make sure that you're able to focus fully on your business and not worry so much about the money coming in as much as you're focused on the growth of the business. And the third tip is to let yourself know that you're never going to feel ready. You're never going to get to the point where you're comfortable enough to take that leap. To give you an example, when I was working, I was like, well, when I get to X amount of the financial situation on my side hustle, I'll take the leap. And I hit that mark and I go, well, let's give it a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And I constantly hesitated because it is scary to leave that comfort of that salary job or whatever you're doing And so I would highly recommend with that third tip to understand, number one, is that you're never going to feel fully comfortable. And then once you've done the first two, then step three is to just take the leap. Go ahead and pursue your dreams, because at the end of the day, honestly, you could always fall back into a job again, but you're going to really regret not taking that leap. So definitely set yourself up for success first, then take the leap, and everything will follow through for you. And the last question I'm going to ask during this Q&A session, I really liked. It's a longer question. I'm going to read it verbatim from Michelle. And here's what she said. She goes, how to get organized with all the smallest of intentional details not overlooked. There's a tornado of Post-it notes flying around in my head along with the to-do lists that I keep creating. Running one successful business and adding a podcast is a challenge. I know there are a lot of moving parts to grow a podcast, and I don't want to miss a single step along the way. But I also need to eat and pay the mortgage, meaning as much as I wake up jacked to work on the podcast, I must attend to business number one first, which takes up 9 hours of my day and all of my creative hours. So I'm going to answer this question without the context of a podcast as the side thing. And what this is saying is I'm deciding to work 9 hours a day instead of focusing on the things that I'm passionate about. And yeah, paying your bills are super important. But here's what I would say to you, and anybody else listening who's kind of in this struggle of like, I'm working my butt off, which I respect wholeheartedly, on this business that I have, and I want to focus on my passions instead. Figure out what you can hand off to somebody else. What can you outsource? It could be the smallest of things. It could be you could outsource people responding to your emails. You can outsource people who reply to the phone calls you have coming in. You can outsource people that do the menial tasks, therefore saving yourself hours a day that you spend doing those things so you can focus on other stuff. To me, my passions are important enough that I'm willing to pay somebody, even if I'm not 100% secure in the financial side of things, to pay somebody. Does that make sense? So if I want to focus on my passion, but I waste 3 hours a day responding to emails, that's a waste of my time. So I'd rather pay somebody so I can focus on the passion, to impact the world, to grow the podcast, to do whatever I need to do. So I would sit down and make a list of things that you waste time doing. Now, I want to understand something. Things that are making you money, the things in your business that you focus on that are making you money, like sales, client work, so on and so forth, you can't cut those out. That's what pays the bills. But it's the menial tasks. So what are you wasting your time doing that you can outsource out? And then find ways to outsource in certain factors, right? There's great websites out there to find people all over the country that'll do this work for you. Some great VAs that you can hire on a monthly basis. So go out there and find how you can outsource the little things so you can focus on the passions. So if you guys loved this Q&A episode, I would love to do more of them. Obviously, I'm going to do more. I have more questions that I need to answer. But if you're somebody who doesn't follow me on social media, or you didn't see my post asking you to send in questions, email me at justin@growthnowmovement.com. Put in the subject line questions for the podcast, and I will make sure to get to as many as I can next time. This was a lot of fun. I mean, I do absolutely love doing this. I love helping you guys as much as possible. Hopefully, if you weren't the specific person who asked me these questions, hopefully these answers helped you in something that you're going through. I tried to find the ones that were asked the most. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I look forward to hearing from you, even more and more questions from you guys, and I'll see you next week.